Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to welcome Minister Kuleba this afternoon through this video conference. Thank you for your time, Minister, because I know that this session was not so easy to schedule. So we have approximately 40 minutes with you this afternoon. A few days ago, we met in Kyiv with a delegation of French colleagues, and some of them are around the table this afternoon. It was just before your trip to the US. So we had a very fruitful discussion, and I think that given the evolution of the situation, your intervention this afternoon is very timely after your stay in the US, and because of the different statements we get from Ukraine, from Russia, from the US, from different European countries about the current situation in Ukraine and most importantly around Ukraine. So that's why we decided to organize this session with our partner, the new European Center, and it's a way for me to thank its director, Aliona Getmanchuk. So, Minister, the floor is yours for your initial statement, and after that, we will take the question. And I ask the participant to use the Q&A file to raise the questions. Up to you, Minister.
Yes, it's great to see you again. And I would like to thank everyone who joined this room to have this conversation. I know there are quite many participants, and this interest of French experts and media and officials in Ukraine is equally reciprocated here in Kyiv. I think Ukraine and France are living through one of the best years in bilateral relations in terms of the level and quality of political contacts between our presidents, but also in terms of the contracts concluded between French and Ukrainian companies. And of course, also thanks to the quality of engagement and cooperation between Ukraine and France in the Normandy format. I met recently with the French Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian and our German counterpart Heiko Maas, and I really appreciate a very proactive stance of Jean-Yves on the situation along Ukrainian border and in the occupied territories, and an active role of French diplomacy. But before coming here, I read the news, the quotation from a daily briefing delivered by a spokesperson of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Maria Zakharova, and she spoke at length on Ukraine. And basically, it sums up the current perception that Russia tries to create, not only for the Russian audience, but also for the international one. And this narrative reads as follows: like, Ukraine is an aggressive country. It provokes, it arranges provocations in Donbas. It gets militarized. It acts in violation of Minsk agreements. And Berlin with Paris are covering Ukraine's back in this. And on the one hand, of course, it's all sounds absurd, but on the other hand, we unfortunately know too well from history that setting up such narratives and which distort reality, but which are necessary to find excuses for your own actions, is not unprecedented. And we know very well how things are turned upside down in order to find excuse for once, in this case, Russia's own actions, either already taken or which can be potentially taken. And this is what we've seen for many years already, basically since 2014. But this spring and these days, as we speak, we see a particularly systematic set of attempts of Russia to send the message both domestically and international. Ukraine is preparing for a war. Ukraine is preparing for a provocation. Ukraine is preparing a forced resolution of the conflict in Donbas. And this is not true. This is a lie. And I take this opportunity to officially tell you that Ukraine is not planning any offensive military operation or provocation. We are fully committed to the peaceful settlement of the conflict. Our proposal to hold the Normandy summit and the meeting of Normandy foreign ministers is still on the table. We want peace and justice. This is it. And whatever Russia is trying to, whatever stage Russia is trying to set for itself, we should all remain vigilant, and we should not be buying these false narratives it tries to spread. Now, when we look at the situation in complexity, of course, I think it's obvious that the gas crisis and the pressure put by Russia on gas market, on the one hand, the situation in Belarus on the other hand, and the militarization, the military buildup of Russia and along our borders and in the occupied territories on the third hand. And on the fourth hand, we should also see systemic attempts of Russia and its proxies in Donbas to impose limitations and sometimes physically block the work of OSCE monitors. This is a clear violation of the decisions which were adopted by the OSCE, and Russia is a part of this organization, and all decisions are adopted by consensus, as you know, in the OSCE. So when you put all these pieces together, you kind of get a very grim picture of serious deterioration of the situation and the availability of a number of destabilizing tracks for Russia. And you never know what will be the major track and what will be the supplementary one. Of course, I do not want a military offensive or any kind of military aggression against Ukraine to be the major track. And that's why we are working with partners, with the United States, with France, with Germany, with other European countries on what we call a deterrence package. And in our view, this deterrence package should include first the political pressure, but I'm afraid that this time it will not be enough to demotivate Russia from taking further aggressive actions. So it should also involve economic measures. We are not talking that sanctions should be imposed now, but unfortunately, we have reasons to believe that if Russia decides to undertake a military operation, then things will be happening in a blink of an eye. And of course, there will be a lot of fighting. We will be defending ourselves. I can assure you of that. But there simply won't be sufficient time to elaborate, to prepare any kind of sanctions and to meet all the procedures necessary for that kind to stop Russia. So it's better to start working now, because even the message, because the preparation, the discussion on the package of sanctions and the preparation of these sanctions will be a message in itself, a message of deterrence. And Russia will think twice or maybe 3 times before making a decision. And the third element of this deterrence package is the cooperation with Ukraine in military sphere. Of course, for natural reasons, if you want to destroy someone, you want that someone to be weak. And that's why Russia is so hysterical about Ukraine's military purchases abroad, military procurement abroad. But I would like to assure you that whatever weapons we have in our hands, if we have to defend our country, we will be doing that. But if Russia sees that Ukraine is strong enough to defend itself and has necessary state-of-the-art defensive weapons, again, that will make Moscow think twice or three times before making any decisions. And that's why I'm emphasizing that everything we're working now is aimed at deterrence. Deterrence, and again, deterrence. This is the goal. Frankly speaking, I have this feeling of deja vu, because again, we're talking, we're discussing how to stop Russia, how to demotivate them from making any kind of aggressive steps. I would be happy to be more focused on pushing Ukrainian interests abroad in different corners of the world, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, to focus on European and Euro-Atlantic integration of my country. But the truth is that we are sitting here and we still have to continue rattling our minds on how to ensure security of this country and how to stop Russia from shattering Ukraine and other European nations. They are doing it in different ways, militarily here, through cyber attacks somewhere else, or through disinformation in other countries. But this is all part of a broader picture. So this is the issue that is of a big concern and puts a lot of pressure on all of us. Everything in this struggle will depend on, first, resilience and strength of Ukraine, and second, a very clear and timely solidarity of international partners with Ukraine. If we have both elements in place, then we will be able to avoid the worst case scenario. And this is exactly the goal that we have in front of us, to avoid the worst case scenario. So that would be my opening remarks, and I will have to leave you 5:15, which is 4:15 in Paris. I have to go to the president's office, where we'll be, by the way, discussing, we'll have a meeting dedicated to the same issue that we're discussing now. But until then, I'm all yours and we'll be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your initial remarks. I have one question, and after that, I will move to Tatiana Castouillet-Jean, and I ask the other participants to use the Q&A file to give them the chance to intervene. You have said something very interesting about the need for Ukraine to set up a deterrence package with its different elements. And also you said that you have a feeling of déjà vu. Could you be more specific about what is new, in your opinion, in the Russian attitude right now? Because you have this feeling of déjà vu, but what is very new? And why are you so anxious about the security situation?
Back in spring, where the entire European and Euro-Atlantic community was put on alert by Russia's massive military buildup, it is true that we do not observe a large movement of forces closer to the border. But the reason for that is very simple. because everything Russia wanted to bring to our border in spring, and it was impossible to do it invisibly, is already there. Despite the assurances of Minister of Defense of Russia, Shoigu, that these were just exercises, and he announced a withdrawal of forces, in real life, very few forces were withdrawn from the front, from the borderline. Which means that Russia effectively has all the infrastructure necessary for military operations. Tanks, camps, artillery systems, missiles, radio jamming systems, it's all there. You do not have to move a lot of military equipment. All you need to do is to bring people in, bring more people in, because thousands of soldiers stayed from spring, since spring, and you need to bring more people and give them the order. So of course, the fair question is why this is happening now. And this question also belongs to the déjà vu category, because every time Russia is doing something, I'm hearing the question, can you please explain us why is it happening now? And I do not want to waste time on answering this question, since, you know, in 2014, when Russia was taking Crimea over, we were asking ourselves, why now? In January 2017, when after a relatively peaceful period in Donbas, a big fighting broke out in the city of Avdiivka, we were asking ourselves, why now? When snipers arrived, Russian snipers arrived to the front line in the beginning of this year, and simply engaged in a safari shooting, killing our soldiers one by one as a training for Russian snipers, we were asking ourselves, why now? I don't think it makes sense to ask this question anymore, because this is just the strategy of Russia. The strategy of Russia is to put military pressure on Ukraine, and on any occasion when it finds it appropriate in its own interests. It's happening. If this happens again in 6 months, I mean, I will not be asking myself why now. I will be simply preparing for another round of this aggressive behavior. But what makes us particularly concerned these days is the combination of different factors, and I mentioned them: the Nord Stream 2 certification and gas prices hiking in the energy sector, the pressure put on EU with migrants in Belarus on another track, military exercises where Russian army is practicing offensive operations taking place along our border. Things come together, and I'll tell you whether Russia will eventually undertake an offensive against Ukraine and when it will take place. But I know that my job is to do everything possible to prevent this scenario from happening. And this is why we are talking. This is why we are talking with you. This is why we are talking with partners, that we have to concentrate all our energy and focus on preventing this scenario from happening, because it will definitely happen if Russia senses, feels, hears, sees the weakness and the lack of capacity, the weakness in Ukraine, the weakness in partners of Ukraine, and the lack of our capacity to prevent them from taking further actions. So you're absolutely right. The question why now is the first one to pop up on our minds. It's true, but Russia has done so many things already. That's simply because they thought it was the right moment to do so. That instead of focusing on why now, we should be focusing on the question, what can we do? This is the real focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I turn now to Tatiana Kastoueva-Jean, and after your answer to Tatiana, I will give the floor to Arno Kalika and Sylvie Kaufmann. So Tatiana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Minister. I have two questions. The first one is I would like to come back to the Minsk agreements. The only thing all parties agree on is that there is no other basis for settlement than this one. But the readings are not only different, but quite opposite. And lately, I have the impression that everyone is trying to break the deadlock, including Russia. Minister Lavrov has made an undiplomatic gesture by publishing the correspondence between the foreign minister for Germany, France, and himself. How does Ukraine concretely see the way out of the deadlock, keeping the basis of the Minsk agreement? And the second question is following. The next 6 months will be very busy and important for France with the presidential elections and the French presidency of the European Union at the same time. What are your expectations, the Ukrainian expectations, both towards the new, maybe old president, French president, and French presidency of the EU? Thank you.
Well, to make Minsk agreements work, we need an honest conversation among 4 countries involved in the Normandy format and in the work of in the implementation of Minsk agreements. Russia, Ukraine, Germany, and France have to sit together, preferably to sit down together and talk, preferably at the level of leaders. And President Macron and Chancellor Merkel and also President Zelensky, they made a number of offers to President Putin, inviting him to hold the summit. He never said no, and that allows Russian propaganda, Russian foreign ministry to insist that they never rejected the idea, they never turned down the offer, but they are not showing up, neither at the summit nor at the Normandy ministerial. And again, Heiko and Jean-Yves did their best to make Minister Lavrov join us. And if he does, I will be not happy, but I will be ready to sit down with him and have an honest conversation of how to take Minsk agreements out of the deadlock. To which Russia brought the Minsk agreements. This is the problem, and there is no military way to revive Minsk agreements. There is only a political way to do it. But to achieve that, you need to talk. That's how politics and diplomacy work. And of course, Minsk agreements start with paragraph 1, which is about security and ceasefire. So we shouldn't allow Russia to take the whole process upside down and insist on political part of Minsk before the security the security part of Minsk is properly implemented. I'm sure that if the comprehensive ceasefire is installed in Donbas, that will open the way to making progress in the implementation of Minsk agreements. But it's not happening. We see shootings, shellings, killings. It's so easy to give orders not to shoot, but somehow Russia is not giving those orders. You are absolutely right about the broader political context of the current situation. The new government in Germany, upcoming elections in France, two key players in the Normandy format are busy with their domestic affairs. So it creates a temptation for Russia to think that Paris and Berlin will be caring more about their domestic agenda rather than the international agenda in the coming months, and therefore giving more space for Russia to act. And I think we should all prove that they are wrong in their calculations. Yesterday, the new coalition agreement in Germany was announced. It contains a pretty firm language on supporting territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine. So we look forward to working with the new German government. We do not expect big changes from German policy on the Ukrainian track. And of course, whatever will be the outcome of elections in France, we should not allow Moscow even the slightest thought that the campaign in France or the preparation for elections is a good moment to do something mean in Ukraine. And from what I've seen recently in the work of my French colleague, France seems to be resolved and active, and we deeply appreciate that position. When it comes to what do we expect, of course, we expect that the war will be over, that Russia will be taking us as a neighbor. We may have difficult relations with them, but we are neighbors, and we are doomed to live together. So instead of trying to destroy us, maybe they should start learning to live with us. And hopefully France and Germany will be ready to help us in shifting this paradigm by being firm, and at the same time by using their channels of communication and their quality of relations with Moscow. What I want to emphasize is that there should one minor but critically important element. While dealing with Russia, we expect Paris and Berlin not to look at Ukraine through the prism of Russia, or through the prism of their relations with Russia. It's a very important correction to the policy. So if we change this optic, and if Paris and Berlin support Ukraine through the prism of their relations with Ukraine, and not through the prism of their broader relations with Russia, I think that will make the peace process more efficient.
Thank you, Minister. To save time, I would suggest the following. So I will give the floor to Arnaud Kalika, and after that, there is in the continuation of Arnaud's question from Sylvie Kaufmann and Paul Véronique. So Arnaud, the floor is yours, and just after Sylvie and Paul, please.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Minister. I have a question about history disciplinary. As we all know, falsification of history is a crucial vector of influence of Russian soft power. This is written in the last Russian strategic concept. Hence, if we consider that most academics in the world learn Ukrainian history from Russian sources, explaining that Ukraine was a former Rus, for instance, I wonder if the future of Ukraine as a sovereign country was to really push more and more on academic issue with the support of your foreign minister. What could you tell us about that? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Arnaud. So Sylvie, the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for this for being available. You talked about the broader context of the European context at large, but there's also a much broader political context, which is the American context. And what do you expect from the United States at this stage in this current tense situation of the Russian buildup? For instance, the Finnish president, Sauli Niinistö, on Monday in Berlin said that exactly like in the spring situation, they are now undergoing discussions between Moscow and Washington about a future summit meeting between Biden and Putin, as there was in the spring, and that is probably for Putin, a way to put pressure on the Biden administration to have this Russian buildup and then to withdraw the troops once he has the assurance of a summit meeting. So what do you think of this game, and how do you expect the US to ease the tension? Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvie. Paul Véronique for finishing this bag of questions.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Foreign Minister. Last Saturday, Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Chief, Kirill Budanov, told the Military Times that an attack by Russia could come in late January or early February, involving, among other things, airstrikes and armored vehicles. Does it mean that the Ukrainian government is actively preparing to deal with Russian invasion, and how in the military field?
Minister, given the fact that there is still 5 minutes, there is two options. The first one is to respond very concisely on this three question, which is not so easy. Or maybe you would prefer to do a sort of global answer to respect your schedule. I'm afraid that we won't be it won't be possible to take other questions to respect your schedule. So the floor is yours.
History is one of the fundamental pillars of the Russian foreign policy. And it took Russia 300 years to create a myth of Ukraine being an indivisible part of Russia, and to install in people's minds the concept of one people, that we are all the same here. We are doing everything possible to change that narrative and to tell the world the truth about our own history and our future in a much smaller amount of time. So you're absolutely right. History is extremely important, and I encourage all historians, experts, and academia in general to work closely on history and reveal those parts of our mutual history which is not overshadowed by Russian narratives. Because before mid 17th century, Moscow was basically absent on European scene, while contacts between Ukraine and European nations were very active, and any representative of Ukrainian elite, of the Cossack elite, felt absolutely comfortably in Paris, in Hamburg, and in other cities, because we were part of that space in the most natural way. But while I do think that government should support some of these efforts, I think the best way to tell the truth is for historians themselves to get interested and to publish relevant researches. But again, without the involvement of state and state narratives. But again, it took Russians 300 years to spread the narrative. So it's not an easy task, but I'm sure that we will eventually succeed. On the United States, yes, you are right. Any scenario is possible. maybe he's prepared. Maybe Putin is preparing for a meeting with Biden and wants to come with a stronger position. Or maybe he's planning to occupy a larger part of Ukraine and to destabilize us from the inside and to finally solve the Ukrainian question. I don't know. I do not read Putin's mind. But as I said in the opening remarks, I have to do everything possible to prevent the worst case scenario from happening. Everything else is the realm of analytics. And to the third question, we are at war with Russia since 2014, when they occupied Crimea and Donbas. More than 14,000 Ukrainian citizens had been killed. About 2 million Ukrainian citizens became internally displaced persons in Ukraine. Some also left to Russia from Donbas. We've been fighting this war for 7 years. We went through many difficulties. Our army was very weak in 2014. And everything we've been doing since then was to strengthen our society, our economy, and our army to be able to prevent another active phase of the war. But if if that active phase is imposed on us, we will be fighting. We are preparing to defend ourselves. This is true, but only to defend. We do not see a military solution to the conflict in Donbas or in Crimea at this point. Having said this, I would really like to apologize for spending not so much time with you, but this is really the maximum I could get. I could steal from my schedule. I hope we will continue this format, and I would like to thank Toma and Alena for arranging this. This is really helpful, and I will remain available for future engagements of this kind. If you visit Ukraine, I will find time, and if I visit Paris, I will also be looking forward to seeing you. So thank you for your interest, and stay safe.
Minister, thank you very much for your time. We are perfectly on time. I just remind the participant that it is a conference which was on the record, so feel free to use what was said very clearly by Minister. And indeed, I hope we will have the opportunity to continue this discussion. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.